geographical information, and that involves the capture of it through things like UAVs and laser technology and so forth, the storage of it and how to sort of access it readily, but also the visualization and the analysis of it. And actually, having textual forms of letters is quite a lot of interest to us because, of course, every letter has an address where it came from, an address where it's going to. And that gives us a way of actually looking and visualizing paths of where these letters have gone. And that gives us another way of searching them and looking for overall patterns in large corpus of letters. So we're certainly interested in these sort of things. So essentially, as I say, what we're interested in is looking at geotechnologies and software to look at all of these different aspects of working with spatial data, and then actually analysing it as well. And so if we move on to the next few slides, what I'm going to do here is just introduce some of the projects that we're currently working on. Again, as Susan said, one of the things we do here is we like to try to do sort of research-led teaching, so that the teaching, particularly in the Spatially Humanities program, which is where we're involved in the teaching, we like to link that very much to our research. So at the moment, I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the research projects we're involved in. And one of the quite big ones we're involved in at the moment, I've already mentioned a little bit about the letters 1916 to 1923. Another of the quite big ones we're involved in, this is around sort of €2 million funding, is something called Building City Dashboards. This actually comes from Science Foundation Ireland. And you've maybe come across the idea of city dashboards as sort of websites that about a city gives you various pieces of information about the city. Some of it in real time, things like the weather in the city, but you can also get information about, say, crime rates in the city. You can get information about traffic in the city and lots of other things. And these city dashboards aren't that unusual. You can find them for quite a number of places. But one of the things we felt that they tend to lack is any sort of analytical dimension, or actually sort of bringing together pieces of information. What they tend to do is have sources of data, and then they just draw basic maps of them. So you get a map of where the car parking spaces are in different places, or where it's raining. But what they don't do is give you a tool to actually look at linkages between things. So, for example, do you get more, in terms of crime, more public order offences when it's not raining, things like that. And being able to link these things together is quite another important tool. And the idea is we want to sort of expand city dashboards by thinking about ways in which we can add more visual and analytical tools to them. And also to take things a bit beyond the basic sort of computer software display. So we're looking at things like 3D projections and virtual reality models of cities and things of this sort, augmented reality models, and that's all part of this this project as well. So probably quite an ambitious project, something that's going to keep us busy, I think, for the next 3 or 4 years. But it's sort of developing these techniques are very much linked with digital humanities and the way we display information and the way we experiment with new ideas about looking at the information. One of them, for example, is we're going to take a sculpture of Dublin and another one of Cork, and actually project data onto that. So this will be like a 3D replica of the models of the buildings in the city, but then to use various projection systems to project information on top of these in real time. So that's the sort of thing we're also interested in there. This is another example, perhaps, of some of the research-led teaching that we do. This was looking at perhaps one of the very early forms of crowdsourced data, just to show that it's not such a new idea. And George Simmons and GIS, basically, this was some work that was done from about 1860 and actually carried on until 1968, encouraging people in Ireland who had rain gauges to share the data and the observations that they had. And actually, this was building up a crowdsourced model of rainfall in Ireland that spans over a century. And because people gave their addresses as well, there's a lot of information, originally all handwritten, about where rainfall occurred and to what level it occurred at, so we can actually get a picture of climate in Ireland and look at how much climate varied, where the principal sources of rainfall were, and where it fluctuated over this period of a century. And what we were then able to do is to take this, in fact, meant to be, very comprehensive view. The person, George Simmons, who encouraged this, he actually wrote a letter to the Times saying that he was encouraging people of both sexes, all ages and all classes to join in with this activity. Basically, the idea was to get this data, which was tabulated in written form, put this into digital form. And then we were able to do things like build up pictures of rainfall in Ireland and analytical pictures, so you can see things not only, for example, where rainfall were and what the trends were, but in this case, where some sort of freak high levels of rainfall were as well, and, for example, identify periods where there may have been flooding and what might have happened up to them and so forth. So quite a lot of interesting sort of climate reconstruction tools come out of this sort of work here. And then a final area of research we're in, and this is perhaps at the moment not funded research, is the idea of trying to explain uncertainty in data and to visualize that. So one of the problems is that a lot of data that's collected, you get the impression that it's all very precise. When you see things on a sort of modern map, you see these very crisp lines giving some impression of certainty that, okay, when you draw a line there, that's definitely where that line actually is, which is fine for certain things. But for a lot of things, if you're saying like, okay, you're trying to delineate an area where there's a high risk of certain kinds of crime, well, it's not really the case that suddenly when you cross this line, you're perfectly safe as opposed to at very high risk. And so rather than delineating these ideas with very crisp lines, we're actually writing software to produce maps that look like they're sort of drawn on the back of an envelope to try to show people that, look, these are things that are based on uncertain information, and whether there's some useful information in there, it's not actually perfect. And this is an example of in the East Midlands in the UK, of what are called travel to work areas. They're largely areas where people live and also work in the same area. And again, they're not a perfect containment in that. Obviously, some people won't live and work in exactly these areas. So we went for this hand-drawn approach. This is another one of soil classification. And you can see the fuzziness in there. Two broad sort of classes of soils there. But some of the areas actually are shaded both ways, so that you can see that actually there's some case that possibly they could be included in both of those classes. And this final one here is actually a map of house prices in London from some data we've got. Now, because the data varies in the amount of places it covers in different parts of London, some of the values we've got are more certain than others. So the shading tells you something about the price of the houses. The darker red, the more expensive. But we can also control how roughly drawn it is, how hand-drawn it is. And that is actually to indicate the different levels of uncertainty there. So you can see, for example, here, it's quite a low price for the housing, but we're quite certain of that. Those are quite neat lines. Here is possibly a case where they're more expensive and we're reasonably certain of. Some of the places in the centre of London are actually much less certain, so therefore we've drawn them in a much more imprecise way. And if you're wondering, one of the reasons for that is that this is basically data about mortgages, and the more data we have, the more certain we are of the average house price. And one of the interesting things about people who live in this part of London is a lot of them don't need mortgages, so they don't end up in that database. So if you've got expensive enough houses, people tend to just buy them outright or as investments and so forth. And one of the points there is, again, to make people think about the nature of the data they're collecting. In one sense, that's sort of that's biased data. It's about mortgages. Not everyone buys their house via a mortgage, and so some of the patterns could otherwise be distorted. So it's trying to get that information across as well. So I think that's basically me done. So I think I'm handing back to Kostas now. Thanks.
Thanks. So let's talk about the two programs now. So when we started thinking about this day, we wanted to have some advertising campaign. So we put down the main aspects of our programs, what we offer, and we came up with the word persist. So hopefully by the end of the open house event, you will realize, and I'll explain what each one of these letters mean to us. You will realize why we think that persist is an important word for us. So the first thing is the potential. So hopefully by the end of the course or much earlier, we want you to realize the potential of using these technologies in a way to break disciplinary boundaries, to realize that we don't have any more to be in our like silos, isolated from other disciplines, but do collaborative work, collaborative research, and realize that how these technologies, regardless of where, what's your house, what's your discipline, either you are geography, history, heritage, literature, English, archaeology, you can apply all these technologies to approach your data sets in different ways and learn to think in different ways. And that's the most important aspect. And generate new knowledge, and knowledge that wouldn't be possible before using more conventional methods. The second word, probably a buzzword, is employment, jobs. So what you get here when you finish the master's is lots of technical skills. It's not a theory-based master's. It has lots of theory because we think that it's very important to be theoretically grounded. So to know why you apply what you apply to your research questions, for example. But you get lots of technical skills, and I have another slide for that. These are also transferable skills. So you learn different technologies, different methods of approaching your work that you can actually transfer, you can apply to other fields. So we do have examples, and we have a session with employers later where people finishing this course or digital humanities courses can go to other sectors, can go to the private sector, to industry, can go to heritage institutions. So there is lots of room for finding a job, especially if you compare it with a traditional master's degree. That's my favorite. And probably not Susan's favorite, because I'm always asking for more equipment. So we do have lots of resources here. As I said, all our teaching is hands-on. We have a strong technological component. We have this is one of our rooms. We have other rooms. But also we have equipment that we are using in our teaching in internships with heritage institutions. We have laser scanners, 3D printers, digitization suites. That's hyperspectral scanner. So this is used for manuscripts, and it uses some technology that you're going to learn in the first semester if you get my module. And in a way, it infrared light penetrates surfaces, so you can find underdrawings, preparatory sketches, palimpsests in the case of manuscripts. So we do have everything you learn. Also, you learn how to apply that, and in most cases, in real-world scenarios. Now, I go back to the skills and the transferable skills I talked to you about. So in this course, you will also learn other skills that will be helpful for the future. For example, you learn management. So you learn how to manage a project, how to manage your time. You learn how to write reports, how to write white papers, and these are essential if you want to go to other sectors as well. So you will get skills that will be very useful to your future career. Either you decide to stay in digital humanities or go somewhere else. And also something that is very important is that in most cases, and this leads me to the next one about the internships, you learn how to apply these skills to real-world experience, to real-world scenarios. So in the first semester, and we have a separate slot for that, and Susan is going to talk in great detail about it, and you will also talk to people we have worked with. In the second semester, we have an internship, which is compulsory for all students, and it's either with a cultural heritage institution or with digital humanities or spatial humanities project, live project, or with the private sector. So there you go to the institution and you work on a project. You don't go to the institution to do photocopying. There are many institutions that they say internships, but they are not actually internships. But in our case, we work together on a project. You are not alone. You have a mentor from here and a supervisor from the Cultural Heritage Institution, and you have to work on a project. And we do have many, many successful examples where people were offered a position at that institution after they finished their internship. And that's a very characteristic example in the Museum of Modern Art. You will meet Meredith in a while. So she created a web resource for one of their temporary exhibitions, and actually Sean, the curator of that exhibition, was really excited because he said that he never expected that a student coming from a university for an internship will leave a fully functional website. And that's the website, and Meredith is going to show you a few more details. But actually, it's a website that they are now using for all their others, for all the other temporary exhibitions. So that's just one example of a very successful project. Now, scholarships, you know, especially if you're Maynooth graduates, the university has 60 scholarships. We have Ailish Murray coming, I think, after lunch to talk about the scholarship opportunities. We also offer 2 small bursaries to contribute to the costs. And there are also other opportunities. You have Susie and Ailish will go through these opportunities later. So, final word is technologies, and you are going to learn lots of different ways of approaching humanities data. You will learn web technologies, you will learn computational imaging, ways to work with digital photography. You will learn geographic information systems, especially if you go to the MSc program, and I'll go into more detail in a bit. You will learn 3D, you will work on 3D graphics, you might work on animation. So there is a huge range of technologies that you're going to learn if you get the modules related to these technologies. And just as so we do have 2 programs. Yeah, I know. I mean, this actually sums up what it was all the previous words. And I think the most important for us is the real world experience. You will realize when you talk to the students that even when we are working during the semesters in the modules, they go to an institution and they carry out a project. So both in my module, and you will meet Vinayak later in his module, the students worked, they had an assessment which was a real world project. So in a way, we want our students to burst the bubble of the classroom and go out and apply what they learn. So, 2 programs. One is the MA in Digital Humanities, and the other is the MSc in Spatial Humanities, which is in collaboration with Chris and Martin upstairs and the National Center for Geocomputation. So both of them can be done full-time over 1 year or part-time over 2 years. And you can get the master's if you do a thesis at the end, or if you decide not to do a thesis, you can live with a postgraduate diploma. And please feel free to stop me if you have any questions. So let's start with the first one, the MA in Digital Humanities. So both programs are 90 ECTS. So this means that you have to get 60 credits from modules and 30, which is the final thesis. So in the case of the MA, we have only 2 compulsory modules. In the first semester, it's the Digital Humanities Theory and Practice, which is an introduction, and I have a slide for that to tell you a few more things. And the other one is the Digital Humanities Practicum, which is the internship. So these are the 2 compulsory ones. There are other modules that you can choose. some of them change from year to year depending on who is the new person who comes in. Digital scholarly editing, mine, you will get these anyway. In some of them, the lecturer might change. The topic might be the same, or we might have extra modules as well. Normally, all of them are 10 ECTS, but for next year, we're also discussing of having smaller ones on 5 ECTS. So you will get 2 5 ECTS modules, which means less work for each one than one 10 ECTS. Susan, would you like to talk about the theory and practice? Yeah.
Thank you. So this is, for Digital Humanities, our introductory module. It covers a broad range of Digital Humanities subjects, so you get it's a kind of taster. Some of the topics we do in our modules, and some of them we don't. We just kind of talk about them. There is also some practice-based, not as much, and some of those have to do with some of the skills you'll need. We also have all of our students, and some of them they'll be speaking later, have a blog. So every student, whether you're doing a master's or a PhD, has a personal blog, and we assign blog posts as some of the assignments. So by the time you finish, you'll have a professional blog that you're able to show people when you're looking for work or going for, say, a PhD if you do. The other module that I teach is one called Digital Scholarly Editing, and it's one of the older methods in digital humanities, still very relevant in both research and for institutions, particularly libraries that have a lot of manuscript sources. So up on the left was a project that my students did a couple of years ago. I think some of them might be speaking, where I was given a diary from this woman's grandfather who had been in the First World War. And the students, she had typed it out, but the students corrected it or uncorrected it because she'd fixed a lot of his spelling, and we went back to actually what he used and put it online. So if you Google the Woodman Diary, you could find it online. It's annotated. And we also had a launch with which the students organized. The donor was so happy with what we did that eventually she gave her entire collection to the Maynooth library because it was a nice complement to the digital project. The last couple of years, we've used Letters 1916, and a couple of students, I think one of them, Mariana, who's coming in later, is going to show you a video that she created, which was part of the outreach of the project. Next year, I'm thinking I might not use letters and find another collection, probably a series of letters or a diary or something, and make it more like the Woodman Diary. But basically, you get taught the skills you need to digitize both the images and, as it were, the back end of these using a standard called TIXML, also some XSLT. So the things you know, you need to put it online, but also there's more than just that. There's the design, there's the annotations, there's how it looks within the web presence itself. How will people want to navigate this? How will they want to engage with it? And so those are the things we need to think about in advance to create the digital edition.
So that's my module, the Digital Heritage Theories, Methods and Challenges. And in that, students learn different methods for digitizing and analyzing cultural heritage artifacts. And as part, all these are examples of students' work in the past years. They are all online, so whatever they create in the module doesn't stay in a folder or in a hard drive. We create online repositories, and they build what Susan said, online presence from the very beginning, which is very crucial for their career afterwards. It is also quite theoretically grounded, so we do learn at the same time why these technologies, can we digitize everything, how to approach these collections, and also as part of this module, their big project, which was an assessment, we worked with the Science Museum, the National Science Museum here in Maynooth, and students digitized their collection. So because it was quite successful, the curator is extremely happy. So next year we're going to continue that, and the idea is to digitize the whole collection of the museum and have it online. And obviously students do get all credit for the work they are doing, so their names are always next to whatever they have created. So that's for the MA, okay? And now let's go to the MSc. The idea is the same. There is crossover, there is overlap between the two courses, but the MSc has a delves more into spatial and temporal aspects of humanities and social sciences. So if you're interested in things like mapping, for example, the MSc might suit you better. But we can discuss that in greater detail afterwards. So also you have to do 60 credits and 30, which is the thesis, so 90 in total. But here things are a bit different. So we have more modules that are compulsory. So people register for the MSc. They have to do the mapping and modeling space and time module, which is an introductory module, very similar to the idea of the theory and practice in the digital humanities course. An introduction to geographical information science, and my module, the digital heritage theories, methods and challenges. These are in the first semester. In the second semester, the only compulsory one is the practicum, so the internship. Again, this course also has an internship with an institution, and of course the thesis if you want to get the MSc. If you just want the diploma, you don't have to do the thesis. Now, depending on, you have to take one more module, so depending on the direction you want to take, so if it's more GIS, geography, spatial or mapping dimension, then you will get the geographic information science in practice. If you're interested in more the 3D things, you will get my module, the 3D modeling, analysis and interpretation of three-dimensional spaces. So in a way, this course gives you these temporal and spatial aspects in both 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions. So you do both of them in the first semester, and then in the second semester, depending on what you're interested in, either you will decide to specialize in 2D spatial and temporal ideas or 3D spatial and temporal ideas. Now, one thing that we didn't say, there is one module which is called structure programming, and it's organized by computer science, and that's a 3-week module which starts last week of August and 2 first weeks in September. It's an intensive module. It's every day for 3 weeks from 10 to 5. And it's not compulsory, but we strongly advise our students to take it because it's not to make you experts in learning a programming language, but to learn how to think computationally. And that's very important. For the other things we're doing in the courses, you might not ever use that programming language. You will be taught Java, but it gives you a very good idea of how to approach programming and modeling data. And it's important to say that it's a 10 ECTS module, so once you are done, August and 2 first weeks of September, you are done with one module already before the course starts in a way. So that's something very good to have in mind. It's last week of August and 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of September. And after that, we start the courses. Yeah. And the MSc, yeah, they are for both. As I said, it's not compulsory, but we do advise students to get it. Oh well, I mean, we have several cases where students couldn't take it because they were working or they couldn't come to Ireland earlier, which is fine. We have the modeling humanities data in the second semester, which builds on similar concepts. So if you don't do the structure programming, the pre-course module, you will have to do the modeling humanities data in this case. So there is always an alternative to facilitate this kind of situations. Yeah, so this is the mapping and modeling space and time module, which is for the MSc, and it's very similar to the concepts of the theory and practice for the MA. So it's the introductory module for the MSc. And we share this with Chris. So first part, I'm doing more, let's say, more theory-based 2D and 3D spatial and temporal concepts. And then Chris can tell you about the second part.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Yes. Well, for the second part, again, we're thinking about space and time processes, but rather than things like making models, it's much more about thinking maybe in a more abstract way about data and information, and, for example, looking for patterns in space and time in, for example, crime patterns, as I said earlier, some of the things like rainfall, or there could be other examples as well. But the idea is to actually try to represent those visually, and the sort of skills that you'll be learning there are really sort of computer visualization techniques, so a certain amount of sort of computer mapping like these things here, and looking at comparing and contrasting patterns and how they might change over time. And the main way you're going to be doing that is through a statistical programming language called R, which is really a sort of language for manipulating data and visualizing data. And it is quite a useful tool. Again, actually it's being used quite a lot, for example, in the creation of infographics. So if you ended up working in that sort of area, having qualified, this would be quite a useful grounding in that. It's one of the key tools for creating that sort of data journalism and infographic type work. And we'd certainly cover that in the part of the course that I'd be covering. And also, again, that's something that probably it is quite helpful if you'd have done the structured programming, although it's not identical to what we'll be doing here. There's a lot of concepts it has in common, and just to get you a grounding in the basic ideas of writing fairly simple programs, it is a very useful tool. And one of the things that we'd be encouraging people to do as part of this is an assignment that's almost sort of halfway between a blog and an ordinary essay, which we're calling an interactive essay. And effectively, you're writing a website with an essay in, but it'll have things like interactive maps in the essay. So if you're writing about, say, crime patterns, you could actually incorporate an illustration in there, which would be a map, but you could actually zoom in on certain areas and click on certain events of crimes that were recorded and have details of them come up, things of that sort. So it's teaching you a certain amount about how to visualize these patterns in space, but also this idea of, to some extent, about sort of infographics and data journalism and the use of these sort of interactive essays as a tool for that. Okay. Actually, what comes up next is some of the other modules that are hosted by the National Centre for Geocomputation. Okay, so the first of these is Introduction to Geographical Information Science. And if you haven't used a geographical information system before, or generally been involved in computer mapping, this will give you a grounding in that. So it will basically teach you the basic ways you can represent geographical data in a computer and how you can actually produce maps. And this one, the emphasis isn't so much on the programming side of things, like it is in the space and time module. It's more just on how to use basic mapping software, how, as I say, geographical data is represented in a computer, and how you can then work with that, create your own data by modifying existing data, and how you can then produce maps and do things like put those on the web and so forth. So this will give you the basics of working with geographical information. And therefore, really, this is a kind of approach that will just make you basically literate and give you a good grounding for the other sort of work. Then the methods and techniques in geocomputation isn't compulsory, but this goes a bit further, again, into some of the programming skills. So this also uses R, and it's particularly showing you how you can work with spatial information, but also, if you haven't covered this sort of idea before, just basic statistical analysis of data, some fairly straightforward stuff. including how you would represent it visually, again, but not necessarily geographical data this time, just any kind of data. If you want to just be able to create simple graphics to look at how crime rates or rainfall or any other thing you might be interested in has changed over time, this is the sort of basic skill sets that you'll get from the methods and techniques in geocomputation. And we will also move there towards producing maps in things like R, so moving from just general data analysis to particularly geographical flavors of that, and again showing you that R is a useful tool for that. So you learn that more from a coding basis, and that's kind of useful because although the basics of GIS will let you come up with mapping solutions for certain kind of commonly occurring situations, you may find yourself having to create something that isn't available off the shelf, and that's where the coding comes in handy. Basically, you learn the skills how to make your own material, if the make your own sort of outputs if the existing ones aren't there. And then in the second semester, there's geographical information science in practice, and whereas the first two modules there are perhaps about learning the skills you need to work with geographical data in certain ways, this one gives you some practical applications of how this is used and what sort of area you might use it in. So that's actually currently running this semester, and that will basically give you an overview of lots of the sort of things that you might actually do once you've got skills of this sort. So, I did talk about crime pattern analysis. That can be one of the examples, but a lot of other sort of areas are covered in this, and this gives you a sort of much broader idea of the sort of things that you might do once you have acquired these sorts of skills. So I'll hand you back to Kostas now.
And that's my, one thing to say, that the introduction to geographical information science is also open to students on the MA in Digital Humanities. So if you're doing the MA in Digital Humanities, you can get this module to get you a fairly good understanding of GIS. And you might realize, and this has happened with many of our students, they say, no, I'm interested in the MA, that's fine, but sometimes they want to work on mapping projects. So if they get, even if they are from history or literature or English, so if they get the Intro to GIS module, they can get a good understanding of this field, and they could actually work on a mapping project even if they are in the MA course. And that's the last module, which is my module in the second semester, and it's open to both programs, the MA and the MSc. And it's 3D modeling, and the idea, I see some scared faces there, and the idea is to learn how to take two-dimensional data, like a plan, for example, something that is destroyed, like church ruins, for example, more ancient data. It's up to you how recent or old you want to be your data sets, and learn how to model these in 3 dimensions for different contexts. So do you want to create a 3D model for a museum? Do you want to create a 3D model for television? Do you want to create a 3D model for researchers to give them a better understanding, of better perception of their data set, but in a 3-dimensional form? So you will learn all the ways and the best practice to do that if you register for this module. So last few things before our students come in, and they'll tell you a few things about their projects. So there are lots of people around. There is core staff in both centers, but also there is a very robust program with workshops, with seminars. We have a program for visiting fellows. So you will see people coming and going from different disciplines. You will have the chance to talk to them. They will give lectures, they will give seminars. So apart from ourselves, unfortunately Jennifer couldn't be in today. She's our project officer. We are getting a new technology officer next month. So there is support from all of us, and also Chris and Martin upstairs, and they do have lots of people working with them, postdoctoral researchers, PhD students, so there is this interaction. You are not alone at all, and you can ask our students for that. I think we are quite proud. Last thing, Susan mentioned that a bit, is the blog. So all our students will create, as part of the introductory modules, either in the MA or the MSc, a blog. So the idea of the blog is that you will it's a professional blog, and the idea is that you will develop your online presence while you're doing the course. So as part of that, in all our modules, we will assign assessments, which will be blog posts. So instead of saying, okay, give us 1,000 word text or 2,000 words text, we'll say, okay, write 2 blog posts. So you will learn, and we have lectures for that, how to create your blog, how to make it look nice, how to make it user-friendly as well, because other people will go into your blog. These are open. And they are great because in the last few years, we have examples where people have contacted our students and said, you know, what you did there is great. I had no idea that I can do that. So could you tell me a few more things? So this is, you know, your presence while you're doing the course, and also something that could lead you to a job afterwards. So we strongly believe on our blogging practice in this case. And I'll hand back to Susan, that she's going to do a short activity on how does DH fit into your career trajectory.
So this is where you get to stand up and not just listen to us. Oh, so we have lots of colored pens and these sticky notes. So what I'd like you to do is, can you pass those around? Take some of the stickies and write down what you think you would like to do next. And if you take a degree like this, where do you think you'd like to be afterwards? When you have a couple of things, write them down and put them up, just stick them up on the wall, and then we'll go through them in a couple of minutes. So for a master's like this, both of them, what would you like to get out of it, and how do you think that will help you with whatever the next stage is of the career you'd like to have, and what that next career might be? You could have a couple things. If they're different, put them on different notes. So maybe just for 5 minutes. So when you finish, oh, you have a lot. Put them up on that wall over there. And then once you put them up, what I'd like you to do, just stick them up so other people could see them. But once you put them up, and they can go on the walls, they can go on the board, doesn't matter. Once you put them up, have a look at what other people have written and see if there are some things in common. And if they are, kind of group them together.
12:45. So do you want to meet up first and have a chat?
Yeah, let me get my things in the back. I'll because I don't remember any of my schedule.
No, that's why I had to look at it there.
You are the first.
So that's brilliant. So thanks very much. So there are quite a few themes coming up. Very much one on using existing resources and remediating them in some new way, something new from something old, taking the past history, lots of 3D, so Costas must have been convincing. Couple people interested in academic things, how to use innovative methods, historical worlds, and a lot of people interested in kind of museum, cultural studies work. And in fact, all of these things are things that our modules do touch on. And in fact, we do quite a lot in those areas. So that's really interesting. So it seems like that might be a good match for some of the ambitions that you might have. So I'm going to turn back over to Costas.
So now before lunch, we will have lunch in like 15 minutes. But before that, we have 4 of our students talk about their work during the course and projects they have been doing, involved in. And the first student, if you can come over, it's Shauna Colgan. She's doing DMA in Digital Humanities. And and she's going to talk about blog design and online presence. Use that.
Okay. Costas chose these screenshots. I didn't. I might have chosen different ones, but you know, it was his choice. As he says, I'm Shauna Colgan. First of all, a bit of background as to who I am and what I do. I came to Digital Humanities straight from a major minor course. I majored in history and had a minor degree in English. So when I came to this, I had absolutely zero knowledge of 3D modeling or programming or any of these things. Half of what he was saying was like a foreign language to me. But, you know, I got there and we got by. So, anyway, moving on to my blog. It's a very nice blog, if I do say so myself. But one of the central sort of things, really, about our practicums that we've been working on is public engagement and developing online presences for existing projects. Pretty much everyone that's doing a practicum at the moment has to, at some stage, redesign or, in fact, maybe even completely design a website. The one I'm working on is the Battle of Mount Street Bridge site, and it's a bit of an adventure for someone who had zero experience in web design, aside from this blog and a bit on Tumblr. So, without saying more than that, we will move on. Over the course, the course, that sounds fun. We've used our blogs for a variety of things, mainly for engaging with course material and continuing class discussions. Most posts actually have been based on class discussions or topics given. It's allowed us to think around a topic in a different way and to do some of our own research on it. But the thing that's maybe presented the most difficulty to someone coming straight from a history degree is I'm used to assessments with 5,000 words in them. Suddenly I have to write an assessment with 500 words, and it's quite a difference to shorten and make your thoughts more concise. But in the current digital age, it is very important to have concise thoughts because, face it, someone's going to open up a blog post. If it goes on and on and on and they have to keep scrolling, they're not going to read it. So they're going to read something short and concise, and that's a skill that we've really learned over the course of this degree. Of course, an increasing number of academics are also using blogs. Quite a lot of academics are using blogs, many of whom we've come across in our course material. For example, Jeremy Huggett, a senior lecturer in archaeology at the University of Glasgow. He has a blog. Conrad Brunstrom here in the English department has a blog which he updates pretty much every day, sometimes multiple times a day. But, you know, we're not just that bad at updating our blogs often. Maybe once every while. Our blogs haven't just engaged with class material and class discussions. They've also acted as a record of the projects we've been working on. Some of our assignments have been to write blog posts about our given projects. So we've a few of them coming up, and they will be exciting. One actually example there, this one here, Branley Coherer 1900. That's a 3D model that I built based on an artifact here in the National Science Museum on the South Campus. These blog posts that we based on our modelling projects, some of them dealt with problems we faced and solutions we came up with to those problems. Some of them dealt with the actual process of building the model with screenshots of the different stages. That particular blog post of mine is a very long one because I faced a lot of problems with that model, but we got it fairly well there at the end. Of course, having to keep a blog for the course was also good practice for working on projects in the future. We've really learned a lot for, say, our careers afterwards and public engagement, and dare I say the term strategies for engaging stakeholders. Designing the blog has also proved very important at the moment with our practicums, because our student blogs that we worked on gave us the insight into web design that we needed to go out and design an actual website for an existing project. So all in all, the blogs have been an excellent thing, even though I went into a blog very wary because I knew nothing. So yeah, can't think of much more I can say, except that public engagement and online platforms. And I'm tired of these words because I've heard so much of them, but they are very important. So I will hand it back to Costas and he will find who's next.
Thanks. So our next student is Mariana Silivri. She's also doing the MA in Digital Humanities, and as part of Susan's module, the Digital Scholarly Editing, she created a video. She's going to talk about it, and it was an outreach project. Thank you, and here's the microphone.
Oh, thank you. Hello, I'm Mariana. I came from Greece. My background is Greek philosophy with specialization in medieval and modern Greek literature. In parallel with my graduate studies, I attended seminar on publishing. I am very interested in the area of publishing, so for this reason, I picked the module Digital Scholarly Editing because I thought that this module would give me all the skills I need to pursue my career goals. Among all things that we learned in this module was how to communicate our work to the public. For this reason, we have as assessment the creation of an outreach activity for the project Letters 1916. And now we will see this the video that I did for this activity. If it works. It doesn't. That was the video, and this was a skill set that I didn't have it before, and this module gave me the opportunity to develop a more creative approach to communicate the project Letters 1916 and my work. So this was a great experience for me. And that's all. Thank you.
Our next student is Hannah Healy. She's going to talk about her work in real, active digital humanities projects. She has worked in both Letters 1916 and the Battle of Mount Street Bridge.
Okay, so hi, I'm Hannah, and my background is in history. So I'll start with the Battle of Mount Street Bridge because it's probably the Digital Humanities project that I was able to use most of the skills I learned in my own discipline. It didn't, for my part in it, I didn't have to use much technology. I don't know how much tech experience you guys have, but just being able to uncompress a zipped file got me the nickname Tech Witch in my graduating class because no one could do anything remotely technological. So for this, I got to research primary sources, and I was kind of looking at what did we think the narrative of the day was. I was comparing, contrasting sources, and trying to find out what actually happened during the battle. So I did all of this, and this was all collated into spreadsheets and spread out over timelines, and it was a lot of work, but it was really fun to actually get to put the skills I used into a different sort of practice, not just essay writing or writing short pieces of text, but researching a project and seeing it all come together. And then letters in 1916 I've spent a lot more time on, and there's a lot of different aspects to this. Some of it more traditional from my humanities, so researching those who wrote letters, those who sent letters, what they were doing in 1916, when they were born, when they were died, and using like familiar databases like the census, Irish newspaper archives. So that I was all very familiar with. But when we put the letter into a digital text edition, we have to use a lot of different skills. So like tagging, TI, XML, all that was completely unfamiliar to me. And working on this while doing my master's really helped me to understand these concepts so much better. Because for me, with technology, I need to practice a lot. I need to do it repeatedly to understand how it's working. So through something we have called LEDED, which is where we do a lot of the markup, I could see different kind of data structures that's really helpful to two of the modules I've done and that I'm doing now. So building digital artifacts last term, and this term modeling data. So that was really helpful for me to understand much better because I could see it in my practical work and then I could do it in class at the same time. So it made the two relate. Sometimes in class you go in, you learn something and you're like, okay, I understand it, but then you come out and someone asks you to apply it, and it's so much more difficult because you're not just doing it in this theoretical context anymore. Like for my practicum, I'm working on building an app, which is completely new to me, and I think I understand it. I do some Code Academy courses online. I'm like, okay, I get the language, and then I have to go and transform this already existing piece of code, and I'm like, I have no idea where this goes, what to do with this, where I'm supposed to put this. So the repeated practice is really, really helpful. And aside from that, I get to do lots of different things that are going to be really good when I go out into the job market, like basically standing up here. I've had to do a few public speaking engagements with letters when we do teachers workshops and we do outreach programs. I've had to teach transition year students how to use the site, how to do these kind of things. And it's really good skills that I can say I've done that may not necessarily be on my course, but are improved by my work within these projects. So I really enjoy doing them, and getting to see like the management side of a project as well brings a whole, like, it brings everything together, how you can see where your skills are going and what you'll be doing in the future. And that was probably a bit faster than I was meant to go. See, my public speaking needs work.
So our last student before lunch, 5 more minutes, is Sonia, and she's going to talk about the work she has done on group projects in 2 modules. Last semester, Vinayak's module on creating digital humanities artifacts, and my module on digital heritage.
Hi, so my name is Sonia. I'm very disappointed Costas didn't try to pronounce my surname. And my background is in anthropology and Celtic studies. So I will talk to you about group projects, which is what I haven't done before this course, like many other things we had to do. So kind of to jump to the end first, the most difficult aspect of this exercise was to actually learn how to work in a group, learn how to trust people, how to distribute workloads, how to manage many disasters that happened along the way, and how to keep the time that we gave each other at the beginning to finish certain tasks. So the first project I'm going to talk about is for Vinayak's module, which is called Creating Digital Human Artifacts. So the premise of the project was to create an online repository for a collection of negatives from the Royal College of Physicians of Ireland. We had about 113, if I remember, negatives, which we had to first digitize, then, correct the colors because they were either in black and white or in sepia. So we had to work on that. And then we had to create a kind of standardized creation model, create metadata for them, and then finally develop a platform on which we would put up those digitized photographs. So obviously first we had to divide roles within the group, which can be challenging because, well, either nobody wants to take a role because it seems too daunting, or there's too many people wanting to do one thing. So that was the first kind of thing we had to figure out how to do. And then once we had that sorted, we could divide the workload. So for this project, as I said, we had 4 steps. The first step, everyone did together. So you can see on the picture on the your left-hand side, that was our amazing digitization setup. Actually, Gavin, who's sitting in the back, was the magical DIY person who invented the little contraption we have there. So at the back, we had an iPad, which was the source of light to kind of, bring the negatives to life. Then we had a glass frame that held the negatives so that we made sure we have, first of all, the measurements and that we don't damage the material, because that was very important. We couldn't really handle it too much. And then we had a camera on a tripod. So we took a photo of each negative one by one. We transferred it to a computer, and that kind of started the digital processing. So Shauna, who was talking before me, was the digitization coordinator. So she came up with a kind of standardized process of doing that. She made sure that everyone did the same thing, that we don't have, one photo that was fantastic, and then the other one that was maybe too blue or something that was cropped wrong. So each member of the group did the thing, but she overlooked that part of the project. It was actually not as difficult as we thought. We had to do a little bit of Photoshop or GIMP, depending what we had. So after we finished with digitization, Hannah took over and the curation group, and they came up with a way of standardized naming so that when we uploaded the photos, they didn't get mixed up. We didn't mix the collection they came from. And in the future, if someone, say, was looking for something specific, it would be easier for them to find it by just, say, Googling it. So that's when metadata comes in. It's pretty much just a set of keywords to make sure that if you're researching certain, say, type of an image or a subject, you could find it that way. So finally, once that was sorted, we moved on to platform, which was the most challenging. We used Omeka. And we had a bit of an issue with the server because Omeka is kind of like a local environment kind of software. So it took us a lot of time to figure out what we want to do. But eventually we came up with a platform that not only displayed the images in the categories we set, but it also allowed people to kind of intuitively navigate through it and tag people that were in the photos. So that was one project. And then the other project in the museum was our digitization project, where we had to develop a 3D model of a couple of objects from the museum. I won't get into much detail, but it was kind of the same premise. First of all, we had to divide the roles. In a way, this project was much more stressful than Vinayak's because technology-wise, it was much more difficult and we didn't know it as well. It's easier to take a photo and then just do stuff to it in Photoshop than create a 3D model from a photograph. So yeah, we learn actually through pain, tears, and sweat and blood, we learn a lot. And the stuff that we figured out at the end would be very helpful if we knew it at the beginning. But hey, I'm learning from it now because I have similar practicum, so I benefit from this. But yeah, what we did, we had 2 groups this time because the class was bigger. And it was interesting to see because each group had a different approach to managing the project. One group decided to split the workload evenly through each step. and they kind of continued that throughout the whole project. So everyone got to do every single step. So from capturing, so taking photos of the picture, through processing, so working on the images in the software and then creating a 3D model in the software, to online publishing and then having the final product and writing a report. And then the other group that I was part of, we had a different kind of structure put in place where the project manager wanted to have a consistency in the 3D modeling, so there were certain people appointed to do the processing, and then afterwards another part of the group came in and kind of took over to make sure that the objects are published online and that the reporting is done properly. So it was interesting at the end to see, you know, how different management styles are working, how different approaches to project management worked, what could have been avoided if we chose different path. But yeah, at the end, I think we all got through, and all of us, I think, got decent enough grades, so we were happy with that. If you want more questions, the kind of dirty stuff behind the door, we can talk after, but I want them included in the presentation. So thank you very much.
So one thing that you have hopefully realized is that it's not master courses that you come to the classroom, you listen to the lecturer, you go home and you do exams. First of all, we don't have exams. Everything is ongoing assessments. So we have these blog posts, we have these projects, and it's the most important, I think, and we in both masters we strongly believe in that. It's real world experience. In all these projects, you heard about roles, management. These are skills you get that you will have to use in your career afterwards, wherever you go, either in academia or in industry. You have to know how to collaborate with other people. You have to know how to cope with difficulties. You have to know how to present your results. And of course, you know, these are skills that you didn't have before. So sometimes it might be painful, but I have to tell you, and if you ask the students, they will all say that it actually pays at the end. Sonia, for example, has an internship with the National Museum of Ireland, the archaeology section, and she actually applies now all the skills that she learned in that module. So definitely, although painful sometimes, that's the learning process. Unfortunately, it's trial and error when we work with technologies, but you do get a lot out of that. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them during lunch. We have lunch for all of you, and we will come back in like half an hour, and we're going to talk about funding. We're going to talk about the internships. So Susan will give you a few more details about the institutions we collaborate with. And we also have people coming in, both past students telling you where they are now, what they have been doing after the course. And also we have employers and people who we have collaborated with from different institutions, from the private sector as well. Some of them will Skype in, so you will get, again, this understanding of how open and inclusive is this course. So let's have lunch now, and feel free to talk to us in the kitchen if you have any questions.